So, contest mode Crota's End is over. Raid guides have been made, loot has been nabbed, emblems dished out, or not. Time for me to share my thoughts on the latest contest mode weekend and Crota's End as a whole. Where to begin? I went into Crota's End weekend expecting one of two things to happen. Either one, we would get a highly entertaining video on Monday from a very defeated Datto confirming that we are now firmly planted in the age of joke difficulty contest mode raids, or two, Bungie would actually give endgame players the challenge that they've been begging for a while. And as much as I envy alternate universe Fallout, who is probably really enjoying that 45-minute long Datto video, in our current reality, we got the latter. And honestly, I think that's probably the better outcome. Crota was hard. It was especially a bucket of ice water to the face because on top of being difficult, this was not only a reprised raid, but a very short and non-threatening one, at least back in D1. Veteran players, myself included, kind of thought this was all going to be a joke, as original D1 Crota now very much looks like a dungeon in D2 rather than a full-length raid. We all know how the raid works. They're just giving us an extra dungeon that we already know how to beat. And I mean, while that is partially true, aka we knew where all the lanterns in the lantern encounter were, we knew what the bridge encounter was probably going to look like, etc. The challenge was definitely there. I've talked about this on stream before, but I, among many, was fairly let down by Root of Nightmares on contest mode. While visually stunning and some interesting encounters like the planet room, ultimately the level of difficulty and overall complexity didn't really do it for me. Too many players could simply turn their brain off, take directions from one fire team leader barking orders at everybody, and burn the whole thing down with near unlimited heavy ammo from perks on the artifact, as they focused purely on ad clear and nothing else. Crota, on the other hand, forced players at sword point to pay attention the entire way through. Yes, the main mechanic in Crota, the Chalice of Light, definitely wasn't the best raid mechanic we've ever had. It felt like a pretty blatant and direct attempt by Bungie to slow players and encounters down. A lot of it involved standing around while we waited for the Chalice meter to fill up. That part I didn't like so much, but what I did like was that at the very least, again, the Chalice mechanic forced everyone on the team to pay attention. It very much felt that, unlike Root of Nightmares, contest mode Crota teams were only as strong as their least focused player. I'm sure some players didn't like that, and that's fine, but I liked how the Chalice probably made much more players lean forward in their gaming chair than the mechanics of Ron. But real quick, why don't we talk numbers? According to Destiny Raid Report, Crota's End Challenge Mode was the lowest success rate day one experience in 4 years. Deepstone Crypt had an overall success rate of 11%, VOW had a success rate of 1.3%, Contest Ron had a whopping 44.3%, and Crota's End had a 4.8%. Around 400,000 players attempted to do Crota's End, which is only a mild decline from Ron, which was 445,000 players. And I'm honestly kind of shocked because the Crota numbers are still higher than Vow of the Disciple and way over Deepstone Crypt. I'd kind of figured with all the crazy good gaming options out there, including best game ever Baldur's Gate 3 and early access Starfield, that the Crota numbers would be noticeably lower. Granted, I'm not really sure if these numbers include players with repeat attempts, which we will talk about shortly. I think there's definitely more to a quote good day one raid than just looking at completion numbers, but honestly, I think Crota's End fits the bill pretty damn well. Feel free to disagree, but I think 44% completion rate for contest mode Ron is insane, and Crota's 4.8% is way more in line with what a contest mode raid should be. I don't want to get into the inevitable argument about gatekeeping or anything like that. Yes, I want D2 players to enjoy raids, but day one raids, or I guess 48-hour contest raids now, should be, in my opinion, the highest level difficulty Destiny 2 has to offer. These things only happen twice per year at most, and we only have, I mean, what, one left? Two, maybe? Which is kind of sad to think about, but yeah, contest mode raids should be wildly challenging, and Crota's End definitely was that. I was really shocked at how difficult the opening lantern encounter was on day one. I've taught the raid to a few people since beating contest mode Crota, and no joke, Iryut and Crota are much easier to teach and nail on the first try than the lantern encounter. The bridge encounter was more or less how I expected it to be. Ute was probably the most different encounter from what I was expecting in my head. It was still kind of a race, but spread out a little bit more, which I did not hate. Before the raid dropped, I'd predicted that Crota's mechanics would be swapped from D1, where you had to down him with weapons and damage him with a hive sword, and oh, how upset I was that I was right. That fight was brutal. Crota went from being a near pushover in D1, where some folks I know even beat him while blindfolded, to an absolute dream-crushing monster. The level of difficulty in that boss fight was exactly what I wanted from a day one raid, and the goddamned rush my team had when we finally took him down in contest challenge mode.
Go. Kill.
Oh my god, you still have to die.
Yes! Let's go!
Oh, baby!
Oh.
But anyway, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Let's talk about a few elephants in the room. I'd heard while raiding that certain players who had completed contest challenge mode in the raid were getting glitched and not getting their challenge mode emblems to drop. Let me tell you, I held my breath hard and my beehole was extra tight when we KO'd Crota a second time, waiting to see if that triumph would or wouldn't pop up on screen. I'm glad it did for us so I can rock that baller emblem, but holy sh*, I was not prepared to learn how many people got that glitch. Apparently, around 33% of players who beat contest challenge mode didn't get their day one emblem. What the f***? That number is unreal high, and while I do have faith that Bungie will eventually comb through the data manually and give players who beat the raid what they've so rightfully earned, that is unfortunately a weird blemish on an otherwise great opening weekend raid. Apparently, some players went back through and redid the final fight with Crota multiple times in order to try and brute force the triumph. Some succeeded, others didn't, and I'd heard that one player even beat Crota 7 times on challenge mode and still didn't get their emblem. Good lord. Normally, when we get updates from Bungie in the TWID about how they're fixing bugs in the system and updating the way they do things and learning from their mistakes on the tech front, my eyes kind of glaze over because I don't really understand 90% of the random tech speak they're throwing in my face. But on that note, I'm really very hopeful that we'll at least get an update on why exactly this happened, and fingers crossed, why they're making sure it won't happen again in the future. I think so much of day one raid completion is straight up being able to proudly wear that emblem as a badge of badassery, and having roughly 1/3 of players miss out on that moment is definitely a feels bad situation for way too many people. Next elephant in the room, which rides in on the coattails of a win, Necrochasm auto-dropping on completion after the 48-hour contest raid was over. To recap, Bungie came out and announced that anyone who completed the raid on contest mode would automatically get the raid exotic, which, by the way, awesome idea and a huge dub. I think if you're good enough to nail the completion on the highest level of difficulty while on borderline little to no sleep, yeah, you deserve the exotic. Not everybody has god tier RNG like Cool Guy, who got the last 5 raid exotics on their first clear, #NotBitter. But yeah, after the 48-hour window was over, it was widely reported that players were still getting the Necrochasm automatically on their first clear until Bungie finally got somebody into the server room and flipped the normal RNG switch back on. And as far as blemishes go, had to bring this up because it's funny, but honestly, I don't really care about it that much as I've been dicked over by RNG too many times. I definitely want Bungie to keep that auto acquire feature going into the final shape for the contest clear. I think it's a great idea. I enjoyed that a lot. Next elephant, day one LFG team raid cheaters. I've thankfully only seen one clip of this, but it's also something I've seen in other raids, including King's Fall and VOG. A team of LFG players who I'm guessing may have either no friends who play D2 or friends who play D2 but don't want a day one raid, banding together and giving Crota's End a shot, only to learn at the last minute that there's a goddamned heathen in the group capable of whipping out and drowning Crota with a 1 million RPM bottomless mag golden gun. And look, I get it. I know that the battle against cheaters is really more like a never-ending war for Bungie, but man, we really gotta up the anti-cheating measures in this game because this absolutely should never happen. If I were one of the other 5 people on this team who learned after who knows how many hours of day one raiding that my clear may now get flagged for being not legit, and maybe might get me banned because some piece of shit on the team revealed himself to be a cheater at the last minute, I'd probably kill an entire bottle of wild turkey out of pure sadness and despair. Seeing clips like this pains me in the deepest part of my soul. Next elephant, which I'm borderline worried to talk about because as I've learned being a full-time content creator, people on the internet be crazy. Salt Agreppo haters. I'm not talking about people getting flustered because Salt is now sort of the New York Yankees in terms of getting raid belts. I'm talking about people who are literally straight up wishing they could cause the guy physical harm or just saying flat out messed up racist things over a video game. There's been so much of this going on in the community now, and it's crazy. And look, I want nothing more than Father O to get his first ever raid belt. If that happened in the final shape raid, I would be ecstatic for the guy. But if you're one of the people who legit wish harm on someone, either for winning or for their general views on in-game balance, I think you genuinely probably have issues and that you need to get help. Moving on, let's wrap things up by looking ahead and talking about the future. I know the following request probably won't happen so deep into Destiny's lifespan, but can we please get contest mode as an optional difficulty modifier on future or past raids? Bungie, I don't know how easy this would be for you to do, but this would be such a layup in terms of making a part of the player base happy. I don't know how much of the player base would take advantage of such a feature, admittedly, probably not a lot. But still, some folks had to miss out on Crota because it clashed with frickin' Labor Day or whatever other reason, and other folks want to just run it back because they didn't get the day one dub, but they want to practice and give it another go and practice for the future. Really wishing we could get that as a feature, but again, this late, kinda doubtful it will happen. Still gonna put the vibe out there. Finally, the next raid coming in the final shape. For a while, I was kind of worried that the raid itself would be the conclusion of the Light and Dark saga. That worried me because if that was the case, I figured Bungie would then dial the difficulty meter down on the contest mode raid because they wouldn't want players to miss out on the final story beat when it happened. Thankfully, according to a recent interview with Joe Blackburn, that seems like it won't be the case. The conclusion of the story won't just be a cutscene, and he has heavily implied that the 8th mission, aka the conclusion to the Light Dark saga, will unlock after the raid. And that sounds great to me. Hopefully that means we can have our cake and eat it too, aka we can have hopefully another appropriately challenging contest raid and then unlock the final story mission so everyone can experience it at the same time if they wish, not just day one raiders. TLDR, GG Bungie. Couple of hiccups, but overall a solid return to form in terms of enjoyment and difficulty, at least to me anyway. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on stream.